Hi, I'm Anne-Marie Mediwake, and I'm here with Lindsey Deluce and Kelsey McEwen. Welcome to CTV Your Morning, the podcast.
This week, we're taking a look at a new docu-series that explores what it is really like to live and love with severe memory loss.
We'll also share our conversation with Grammy-award winning artist Alessia Cara. She is back with brand new music.
Thanks for joining us. Don't forget, you can watch us live. CTV Your Morning, it's on weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, 7 to 10 a.m. Atlantic on CTV, CTV News Channel, and on your CTV News app.
We're starting the podcast this week with travel talk. Yeah, travel talk, because, you know, the tension between the U.S. and Canada have some snowbirds rethinking their plans to head to the U.S.
Yeah, they're now looking for places outside of the United States to escape all the winter woes.
So for this, we brought on travel journalist Lauren Christie. He laid out these alternative destinations and then broke down what the snowbird exodus could mean for the U.S. tourism industry.
So you were just in Arizona.
Yeah.
That is a hot spot for Canadians, as we know. Snowbirds like to head there. So when all of this tariff talk started, I mean, you were there. What were you hearing from people?
Well, it's very interesting. So I was in Scottsdale specifically, and, you know, I'm there for a few days vacation, and it's golf courses and pickleball and arts and culture and food and cuisine and all that stuff that you would expect on a nice, warm vacation. But when you started to talk to the community, that's when you started to feel the anxiety. And so from the community, I mean, there's the Americans on the one side. So whether it was the Uber driver, the restaurant server, the museum guide, every single one of them, when they learned I was Canadian, said to me, thank you so much for coming. We're so sorry about this. We do not want this, because they understand, like, number one, international visitors to Scottsdale are Canadians, and they get that. And then on the flip side, well, not the flip side, but also I was talking to, you know, Canadians there. I had dinner with snowbird friends who are down there. They've been going for 8 years, and they were feeling anxiety from all the social media pressure to not go to the States. But again, they're there with their community. And their point was, you know, we spend our money down here, sure, but we got down here on a Canadian airline. We're renting our house for 4 months from a Canadian couple in Calgary.
Interesting.
Canadian insurance. So it's not as clear cut on those lines where the money goes or stays. So it's tough.
It really is tough. It's a tough time right now. I want to break down some numbers if we could, because the U.S. Travel Association has released some pretty staggering numbers. Here they are. The association says there could be a 10% reduction in Canadian travel to the U.S. as a result of all of this tension that's happening. That could mean, you see it on your screen, a loss of potentially $2.1 billion in spending and about 14,000 jobs lost. So what do you think the economic impact is going to look like?
It is going to look massive. I mean, that's just an estimation. As you said, we're the #1 international market, not just for Scottsdale or Arizona, but for all of the U.S. There's 20.4 million Canadians went in 2024. That's $20.5 billion. So if this continues, I mean, there's snowbirds, but there's also regular vacationers and business travelers. Like, it could have a wide-ranging effect depending on how serious this becomes.
Yeah, and the word boycott is being thrown around a lot from people saying they don't want to travel to the U.S. They're going to do this travel boycott. What do you think of that move?
I really grapple with this. This Trump and his supporters, their talk and their tariffs, it feels like a personal attack on all of us. And so I think people are hurt and they want to push back. The issue I have with, or the other side that I see, is that travel is not a product. Travel, one of the best things about travel is the relationships you make, the friendships, and the connections you make with people, and understanding when you go to other countries. So when you're talking to people who are in these communities, what's going to happen is they're going to become isolated and create divisions, which is the opposite of what travel does, and it's exactly what Trump wants to happen. So I have a problem with that. It hurts me a little bit. And as a member of the 2S LGBTQI plus community, you know, as a gay man, we've dealt with this for years. There's a lot of places where it's illegal to be meat. And so I have conversations with people about whether we should be going or not going. And, you know, some people they do boycott, and other people feel like if I'm not there to have the conversation and create the relationship, change won't happen.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah.
And so there are two sides, and I guess my main message or my main feeling is that both sides are right. So don't shame each other for making different decisions.
Right, personal choices. Let's talk about alternate destinations. And for those that are saying, you know what? Maybe for right now, at least, I want to go somewhere else other than the U.S. I want to go south, but somewhere else. Where would you recommend?
You know, Mexico is a great spot. It's the #2 choice for Canadian snowbirds right now. It can be a little unsafe in certain areas, but other places are great. My mother-in-law spends 3.5 months down there every year and loves it. Costa Rica is really popular.
I'm going.
It's popular. Hey, it's called the Switzerland of the Americas, and particularly the Northwest Coast. Canadians have been going there for years. It's affordable. It's got a lot of things that you want in terms of, you know, safety and accessibility and all that stuff that are important for snowbirds. Panama's growing. The only issue with Panama, it's a great spot. I've been before. The only issue with Panama, their supply hasn't quite caught up with the demand, so they're a little short on accommodations for long-term rentals. Cuba has traditionally been also an interesting spot, but they're struggling a little bit with shortages in terms of even food to electrical, so do your research on that one. And then the other one I think is very interesting is Portugal. You know, in Europe, you know, it's one of the more affordable destinations. It's mild down on the Algarve coast, and people really like it, and they have lots of accommodation options there.
I love these options.
You know, I think this conversation goes even beyond snowbirds. It goes to all people from different aspects of life, different ages, who are looking to travel, who often would pick destinations like Florida, like Arizona, like California, like Vegas to get away. And I'm hearing my group of friends certainly pause. Maybe not pause the booking just yet, but pause and think, is that where we want to go?
Yeah. Also our dollar.
I was just going to say.
It is not in the best place right now, so your dollar is not going to go as far in the U.S., right? So one of the things that we were talking about was, what about all these amazing places within the country?
Well, we did that, I mean, during lockdown when you couldn't cross the border, right? And so you were forced to sort of take a look from coast to coast and figure out where you wanted. So that's when we took our trip to New Brunswick, which was a great trip to take with the kids. You know, it is affordable. It is local. You're supporting the Canadian economy, and you're getting to see really great places that the kids have learned about in school. And you get to see it for yourself, which is
this
great.
One of those RV trips you took? Was this the RV trip?
No. This one we flew. But we've done RV trips before too, and those are a lot of fun. It is fun to see your own country.
It really is. Some of my favorite spots to go would be, obviously I grew up in Calgary, and we would go westward into BC. And if you have yet to go to the BC Okanagan, I know it's winter, and it's still a beautiful spot to visit in winter, but if you can go in the summertime, the vineyards through there are something to see. And there's so many big, great wines that come out of that BC interior that I would highly recommend to do so. I think another big spot that if you can visit is Jasper. We've talked a lot about Jasper, about the rebuild there. Obviously, the fires through the region were so devastating, and tourism is such a big part of their industry. And they have said, if you can responsibly come back, please do, because we need you to come visit. So, I mean, if we can travel across the country, that's the dream.
Where's one spot you haven't been that you want to go?
Well, I haven't been to New Brunswick. I've been everywhere in Atlantic Canada, every province, I should say, but I haven't been there. And then I haven't been to the north, and I would love to go to Canada's north. We show a lot of like webcams of the Northern Lights and the polar bears, and I would love to be able to see that. But my ultimate bucket list trip in Canada is to go iceberg hunting in Newfoundland.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yes.
Can I come?
I want all of us to go. I want to stay in Trinity Bay because it looks like a postcard, and I think you'd get to like stay there. And then I just want to sit in someone's backyard and watch the icebergs go by.
That's a really specific request.
But we've had people send us in greetings and send video, and you see it on social media when they're like, look, there go the icebergs.
It's so true.
I want to see that.
I know, me too.
What about you, Linz?
I want to do that too. Well, Newfoundland is at the top of my list. It really is. And I can't believe, because I lived in Halifax for many years, and I cannot believe I never went. I know, but it's one of those things when you live close to something, you tend not to go to the thing that's so close. Don't you find that?
Yes, well, okay, so that was me. I started my career in Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
I was working for the first time presenting weather. I started my meteorological studies there, and you know what I never did? Never went storm chasing in Saskatchewan. Which like now feels like such a no-brainer because the storms there are so big.
Well, the land is so flat and the horizon is so big that you can see the storm coming.
And going.
Yeah, and going.
I mean, we have such a beautiful country, and I appreciate, like, we started this segment talking about snowbird travel. I appreciate your snowbirding to get into warmer weather. I get that. But, you know, our weather might not be warm, but our hearts are.
Whoa.
I went
was such a Kelsey
tourism
comment.
campaign.
The weather may not be warm, but our hearts are.
I love Canada.
Me too.
Over the last decade, Mississauga's own Alessia Cara has really earned her place on the world stage.
Yeah, I want to take you back to 2018 when she made history as the first Canadian to win Best New Artist at the Grammys.
Her voice is so good. It's so good. And people know that obviously because you think about how many times her music has been streamed. It's been streamed 12.5 billion times. Wow. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Obviously even more to come because she's got a new album out called Love and Hyperbole.
I feel like, I mean, hearing your own voice can always be a little jarring. I'm sure someone on TV, you could probably maybe feel the same.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of artists feel that way, but I also am just really excited about this music. So it's a nice feeling to be able to listen back and not be like, too much. Like, I actually really do. I mean, I enjoy all the music that I've made, but this album in particular is my favorite thing I've ever made, so I do enjoy listening to it.
Okay, you said sometimes when you look back, I'm gonna take you back a little bit because you did an interview with us in 2020, 5 years ago. Here's a look at that. You're gonna get to hear this.
The songwriter one is always a little closer to my heart just because that's, you know, what I do for a living, and I pour my heart and soul into my music. I know that sounds very cheesy, but it's the truth. And so getting acknowledged for my work.
Obviously, this is during COVID time. Really, so you were, I think you were in your kitchen or something.
I was in my parents' kitchen.
When you listen to that and you hear about this young artist who is passionate and loved her music, how do you feel like you've grown or changed in the last 5 years since we talked?
It's crazy. It's crazy that it's been 5 years. I can't believe it, because I look at that version of myself, and on one end it feels like it was 2 days ago, and then on another end it feels like a million years ago, and like a million versions of myself ago. I mean, I feel like I'm just in a better place now. I think obviously with time we all grow, we all change, we learn things through walks of life, and I feel like just as an artist, I think just found my sound a little bit more. I think every album that I do, every project that I release, I get closer and closer to a version of myself that I've always wanted to be. And even in my personal life, it just comes with growing up. I just feel like a more sophisticated, more wise version of that person. But I do feel like that DNA, of course, is still in me. I'm still the same person in the sense that I was when I first started. So it's like a little bit of both.
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
Love and Hyperbole is the first project that you've put out since 2021. What is this album about?
So this album is honestly about kind of like a retelling of the last 3 years of my life, and all the different things that I experienced, specifically surrounding love, whether it's romantic love, self-love, just love of life, and kind of learning how to reshape my love of music, to be honest. There was a period of time where I didn't really make any music, and I kind of had to rediscover my love for that.
Why didn't you make any music?
I don't know. I think I just kind of needed to step back from it a little bit. I think I just have been doing it for, at that time, for the last 8 years of my life, and it kind of becomes your identity for a little bit, and it's hard to continue creating from experience when you don't have a lot of experiences to, pull from, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of had to live a little bit of life and figure some things out. And this album is basically about that process over, the last 3 years.
You share some of that process with us. We went scrolling on your Instagram. You recorded this entire album live, which I love. Very old school, very organic. I want to share with everybody what you put up on social media and then ask you about it.
Okay.
Hello.
Like a movie scene. Hear the angels sing. Like a movie scene. Like a movie scene.
What I love about this is a part of world and life that I don't know, I will never see. And you bring us inside. What is with the bullhorn?
See, that is so funny. I did not think this was going to be on TV. That's hilarious. That was just literally like an improv thing. We were recording what is called crowd vocals that you actually hear in slow motion. In the call and response part, you hear this kind of choir-esque sound, and that's actually us doing that.
Cool.
So the bullhorn, the megaphone was just me trying to add different textures to it. I think the beauty of doing stuff live and working with a bunch of people that you get along with and that you can create freely with is you just try things. That's the beauty of creating in a fun space. And so we were just having a ton of fun, as you can see. And yeah, I'm just so glad that I got to incorporate that and actually put that in the final product of the song, because people, when you hear it, you might not realize or know the process, but me knowing what it took to get there, and I just think of all those memories, and it's really fun. So.
When Nesh Pillay woke up one afternoon in 2022 after a nap thinking it was 1996, she didn't recognize her fiance, her young daughter, or the life she had built.
22, most of my life, I remember through what other people have told me and through pictures and videos.
Do you remember what month we have?
The month it is?
Yeah.
It's October 19, 2008.
Okay.
So in 2022, I lost my memory.
As she struggled to piece together her reality, she began sharing her journey on TikTok, and her story went viral, making headlines right around the world as the real-life 50 First Dates couple. Now, the docuseries 50,000 First Dates, a true story, follows her search and for answers and the challenges of memory loss. Nesh joins us now. Great to have you in.
Thank you so much for having me.
Nesh, can you take me back to that moment when you woke up and you realized something was wrong?
To the best of my ability, from what I remember, I will. There was just a lot of panic and a lot of fear. I knew something was happening, but I didn't know what that was. And yeah, I was afraid, and I needed help.
How old did you think you were when you woke up?
You know, it actually varied. So it wasn't like a quick thing, but based on the videos I've seen, around 17. At one point, I said it was 1996, so I would have been 6. It did vary during that time, but much younger than I am now.
You started sharing your story on social media, and millions of people tuned in. Let's take a look.
I lost my mind. Well, my memory. I didn't know my age or what year it was.
96, sorry.
So I was shocked to find my sisters grown up.
What was it like sharing your story on TikTok?
You know, at first, I just did it to let my family and friends know why I had been quiet for a few months, and I didn't have the brain to reach out individually. I did not anticipate this sort of response. You know, of course, something like memory loss is so bizarre and it's so like the movies, but when it's happening to you, it doesn't seem that crazy. So I was really shocked.
At the time, you were sharing your story alongside JJ.
Yes.
Your fiance. And your relationship, obviously, with him really had to evolve over that time. So what was that like to go through that with him?
I mean, it was so incredibly special for me. You know, who we were when I lost my memory is very different from who we became, because, you know, I was this fun girl about town and suddenly I didn't remember who he was. And so it really was testing for the relationship. Unlike the movies, these things don't make a relationship easier. They make one a lot more difficult.
Mm-hmm. You post one video where you comment how he's always there.
Yeah.
That you go to the bathroom and he's there. You wake up and he's there.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be the constant, that he was there. And he shares in this dramatized video that you guys did that he cried.
Yeah.
And he felt sad and he was scared too.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine for him what he must have felt.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't want to speak for him, but in those moments, I needed supervision 24 hours a day because my memory was resetting so often. And what's interesting is, even though I didn't remember him, he was the person I chose to be with me. Yeah, and at the time, we didn't know if I would remember again or if I would get better again. So he was by my side, you know, not knowing what the future held.
As your story caught the attention of the internet, as it started to make headlines, obviously there were some people who met you with skepticism.
Yeah.
And who said you're faking it. So how do you handle that?
You know, I don't even think it's something I need to handle. I think that it is healthy to have skepticism when you're looking at things online. I care more about being believed by doctors and loved ones, which is something that a lot of people with TBI struggle with. Those are the things that have a major impact on my day-to-day life. And online, you know, the support so far outweighs the skepticism that it doesn't bother me too much.
You said TBI, traumatic brain injury.
Yes.
So the docuseries follows your search for medical answers.
Yes.
So what is the most surprising thing that you've learned about what you are living with?
I think the biggest thing is, after being told your scans are normal, and really being insinuated that I was making it up or having that insinuated. What was shocking is when I actually do see the scans of what my brain looks like, and I see how sort of shriveled up it is, and I can finally see the impact of those many concussions throughout my life. I was so grateful for answers, but I was also really mad that it had to get to this point, and I had to have a camera crew to begin to get answers.
How are you today?
I'm doing all right. You know, my memory's not what I would like. My brain is not what I would like. But I'm not focusing on what I don't have. I'm focusing on the fact that I'm here every day. You know, I get to snuggle my kids. And if I'm afraid I won't remember a moment, I take out my phone and I record. I'm always recording things. And it's just, you adjust, you know. I'm just grateful for every moment.
Thanks for listening to Your Morning, the podcast. Every week, we bring you some of the most interesting conversations from the show on a wide variety of topics. But of course, you can always watch us live weekdays, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, 7 to 10 a.m. Atlantic on CTV, CTV News Channel, or on your CTV News app.
It is easy to blame busy days as the reason why you're not having sex with your partner. But what if I told you sleep could be the reason why you're not getting it on? Our next guest says there is a direct correlation between how much sleep you're getting and the quality of sex you're having. Sleep expert Amanda Jewson is here to tell us all about it. Good morning.
You just said getting it on.
I added that. That was a Lindsay add-on, but it's true. How much and how does poor sleep impact your sex drive?
Yeah, okay, so really interesting stuff, and we have good evidence. I always talk about the evidence. A 2014 study looked at women over 50 who were getting less than 7 hours of sleep, and they often reported, now this is compared to their counterparts, less sex overall. Same is true for men. We look at men. A 2021 study showed us that men who are getting poor sleep, reported poor sleep outcomes, they produce less testosterone. That's the sexual hormone in men. Women produce it as well, but they produce less testosterone and they have more cortisol in their body. So not only are they not getting it on, they're stressed as well. So
not a good combo.
No, it really isn't.
No, so how much sleep do we actually need to start improving our sex lives?
Great question. I always talk about this. Canadians need between 7 to 9 hours. 7 to 9 hours. If you are getting less than 7 hours of sleep, I know.
I'm like,
everyone here starts to itch a little bit. Yeah. But if you're getting consistently less than 7 hours of sleep, this can have significant impacts on how we produce desire hormones. Even when we look at the studies, people talk about reported satisfaction with sex. So you could be having sex and not even feel satisfied. The reported outcomes are really related to that 7 to 9 hours of sleep. If you're not getting that, it's time to look at that part of your life.
And what about chronotypes? You say that they can play a big part. How so?
Huge. So this is really interesting. When you look at the science, people report my husband is a morning person. I'm not. We have desire at different times of the day. So your chronotype, whether you're an early bird, a late owl, can impact your desire when you have the urge to want to have sex. So really talking about your partner, even like light exposure, when you have meals, having meals together can really regulate that internal body clock to make that a little bit easier for you.
Oh, so interesting.
Isn't it?
Is it fair to say that some people may actually just be too tired?
Yeah, 100%.
Like regardless of how much sleep they're getting?
Yeah, and that always brings me back to the point that I always talk about on this show. You might be too tired. And if you are consistently ongoing feeling fatigued and tired to participate in joyful things, it's probably time to talk to your doctor. Sleep disorders are often underdiagnosed because they mimic other disorders. If you're waking up with morning headaches, a dry mouth, you're restless in your bed, you can't fall asleep, or you wake up frequently overnight, these are all very treatable conditions, often with behavioral therapy, sometimes with non-invasive measures. So go and talk to your doctor. If you're really frequently tired, it's time to see someone.
Okay, good advice. So what are some steps we can take to improve our sleep habits and therefore sexy time?
You're killing me. Okay, the first one, I want to talk about willingness windows. So when we look at the science, this came up. This is where you have your chronotypes, you're on two different spots. Talk about times where you're both experiencing desire at the same time. If you're an early bird, you have energy, let's say between 7 and 1 p.m. If you're a late owl, you might be getting up at 12. So find a willingness window. Talk about it. Sex and sleep, they're not going to happen on their own. You have to give in that effort. Finding those willingness windows is key. Set the stage for rest, okay? The same things that make sex wonderful are the same things that can help sleep. Buy nice sheets. Think about your lighting. Get rid of all of the blue light. Take away your phones. Sorry, I'm yelling at you.
Okay,
Take away your phones.
I'm listening,
Do
Amanda.
all those things.
Yes.
Make your bedroom a sanctuary.
I love that. Always great to see you. Happy
Likewise.
Valentine's Day.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Well, while love is in the air, deception is afoot. We are talking about romance scams, crimes which are now more sophisticated than ever.
There's a new W5 series investigating this particular scammer, who stole at least $160,000 from more than a dozen women.
This is wild. So he's now behind bars, but there are new allegations that he hasn't stopped scamming people. Here's W5's John Woodward.
How intricate is this scheme? And was it a dozen women at the same time or spread out over time?
Well, sophisticated doesn't even really begin to describe it, because when you talk to each of these women, what you see is a different variation of the same thing. So he'll meet them online, become incredibly charming. He's singing songs. He's just, they describe him as enormously charismatic. And then pretty soon he's moved in with them. He's, acting almost like a...
So he's living in their home while he's scamming other women.
Exactly. So while he's doing that, he's on the phone with somebody else. And one of the really fascinating things about this series was uncovering these lies layer by layer. One example was he was in a relationship with one woman, was trying to help her sell a motorcycle, doing a favor. The motorcycle disappears. She never gets the money. And then she's going, well, what happened? Am I crazy? Did something, was I the one who was misunderstanding what's going on?
Yeah.
She gets online, discovers a community of more than 100 women who have recognized that person, not by his name, but by his picture.
Wow.
And they realize, okay, was it Johnny Mulders, Johnny Boulders, John Myers? All of these different names came together in that moment, and they realized just how enormous this actually was.
Yeah, we're used to hearing about these online scams, right? Either they happen over the phone or they happen digitally, but parts of this were different in that not only was he cheating in his romantic partners, but he was also stealing from them. So what did you learn about how romance scams have evolved?
Well, this guy, like I say, was sophisticated, so he's in their lives, and I think that was a testament to how good he was. So on the one hand, he's texting. He'll say, "Oh, I'm visiting my dad in the hospital. Here's a photo of me at the hospital," or "I'm at my parents' ranch, building connections with a woman based on common interests like motorcycles and horses."
Yeah.
And when it came down to it, a lot of them recognized the same picture.
Wow.
He was sending the same picture to multiple women at different times. These were
with
not
different
selfies.
stories attached.
Yeah, his parents don't even own a farm.
Wow.
So the brazenness of these lies was really carried by the charisma that he offered them.
Despite now being behind bars, Mulder, I believe is his actual name, the one he actually goes by, appears to have set up a now deleted dating profile, but he's denying he's behind this account that is still scamming women. But what did you learn about this?
We learned that if he's denying, the guy who posted that picture has a lot of access to pictures of him and also knew a lot about the sentence that he was going to get before it was actually in court. But these women are believing that now that he's been arrested, he faced a number of fraud charges in 13 cases, as you said.
Yeah.
They thought that was it, right? They thought you can't get access to cell phones or to the internet in prison.
Sure.
Somehow he managed to do that, and they see this profile on Plenty of Fish pop up where it says, I'm John Mulders, I'm serving a sentence for fraud, but I'm willing to change, right? I'm willing to put all my cards on the table,
right,
and be your dream guy.
Wow. So that is an interesting side note to this story. Correctional Services Canada says there's about 2,800 illegally smuggled cell phones seized from federal prisons between 2023 and 2024. What have you been learned about that aspect of the story? Because they're not supposed to have cell phones in prison.
In most prison systems across Canada, you are not allowed the internet at all, officially. But unofficially, there is a thriving black market of cell phone trades coming in and out. I mean, to your point, in the federal system, thousands. In the Quebec system, thousands. I'm tending to believe that that's the accurate number. The other provincial systems are a handful. Ontario jumped from a handful to 11 after a rapper, Top 5, you may remember, was able to smuggle a cell phone into prison to shoot a music video.
Wow.
So there's very easy access to internet under the table, despite the very best efforts of our officials to get to the bottom of it.
This is one of a 3-part series on romance scams. I'm glad that you're following up on them, and I'm glad that these women are speaking out, that they're not being shielded by this stigma, but they're out there warning other women. John, great work. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks.
Up next, parents and police are warning about the potential danger lurking on this popular social media platform.
Yeah, in fact, there's a group of parents in the United States who are right now suing the parent company of Snapchat, saying that their kids were able to use it to buy illegal drugs and then overdosed on them.
Brett Caraway is a media and economics professor at the University of Toronto. He weighs in on this.
So what makes Snapchat such an easy avenue or an easier avenue for drug dealers to access young people?
So it's slightly different than something like Facebook or Instagram in the sense that it was built from the beginning as a way to sort of share photos that would disappear. So the idea behind Snapchat is that you can add friends and then all of a sudden have some direct messaging going on, but then the messages just sort of disappear into the ether. So a drug dealer likes that because it doesn't leave some sort of archive of communications between them and the person they're selling drugs to.
This is part of the problem why it's difficult to police, but makes it easier for drug dealers. Social media platforms, we know, have safeguards in place for illegal activity, and they include keywords that sort of trigger against an inappropriate response or against a code that they have in place. But there are examples of the workarounds on this, and I wanted to show some to some people. These are from the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency. This is how young people and drug dealers are using emojis to get around the keywords. So, just to walk you through this, a cookie emoji means large batch. A crystal ball is meth. A diamond represents cocaine. Is this part of the challenge, then, of policing the app?
Yeah, absolutely. So these are essentially like pictograms. And
Yes.
started a long time ago, like late 1980s, and it was usually something very simple, like a little smiley face that would convey some sort of emotional augmenting of a direct message of some kind.
Yeah.
But they can mean anything. So if you think it's hard to keep up with your child's jargon, imagine throwing in pictures on top of that. So the meaning behind them is not always obvious. It can be a sort of subtle communication that happens. So I sort of think of it as the digital equivalent of winking at somebody in a crowded room. It's something that maybe nobody else sees, but the person receiving the message understands that it's a cue about something, and they can use that to communicate sort of under the radar.
And on the flip side of that, if you try to confront somebody on it, you can also say, that's not what I meant.
That's right.
How is Snapchat responding to these allegations?
So they're always talking about how they try and do the best things that they can to sort of monitor content. So they talk about anything that creates severe harm is against their community guidelines. And so that includes everything from like terrorism to bullying to child trafficking, and then of course drug use is part of that as well. So they're supposedly using AI and some sort of filtering software to try and look for those patterns, and then if they can identify a profile that looks like a drug dealer, remove that individual from the network.
Most social media apps do have protective language that makes them a carrier information, but not responsible for the actual information itself. What will parents have to prove in this lawsuit south of the border in order to get around that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So Snapchat has already said we shouldn't be charged with anything here because we fall under Section 230 of the CDA, which is that safe harbor clause that you're talking about. But this lawsuit is different in the sense that it's targeting the platform not because of the content posted by third parties, the people using the platform, but because of the design of the platform itself. It's this idea that the messages disappear immediately after seeing it. And the lawsuit is essentially making the case that it's the design of the platform itself that makes it so amenable for this particular type of illegal activity, and the platform owner should be responsible because of that.
Well, this is very similar then to the one against Fortnite, where parents said it was designed to be addictive and should not be advertised to children. We reached out to Snapchat for a statement. I'm going to read it and get your response. They had this to say to us: the sale of illicit drugs on Snapchat is prohibited. At Snap, we work diligently to stop drug dealers from abusing our platform. We deploy advanced technologies to proactively identify and shut dealers down, and we support law enforcement efforts to help bring them to justice. What's your response to that?
It's an appropriate sort of response to make because of these allegations. I don't think that Snapchat wants this sort of activity transpiring on the network. It makes the network sort of like a risky environment. It makes it so that advertisers don't want to be there. But I don't know how much they can do because this is not like Facebook where there's a nice long archive of messages that parents can see. I just think it's kind of a whack-a-mole scenario. You can find someone and then remove them from the network, and then they could turn around and create another account. So it's just going to be tricky for them.
Speaking of tricky, I mean, this stuff scares me. Like social media, we're navigating this right now. You know, I have daughters in grade 7, a son in grade 5, my other daughter's in grade 1. But the grade 7 conversations, because so many of these kids are using social media to communicate. And we're, you know, having the conversations with other, you know, friend groups, parents, about who's on and who's off.
Yeah.
You know, and there's so many more being on. And we're trying to do the wait till 8. You know, that movement where, you know, there's no social media really for Brooklyn at this point. But she's in grade 7 and that is coming. And so I'm trying to really educate myself.
Well, especially if that's the mode where they're communicating, because you don't want people to be left out of the communications.
Right.
That's how we jumped into this, is because, you know, our kids were always asking for the phones and they were like, everyone has one. And my response was, good, then use your friends if you need to reach me, if they all have them. We waited, and then, I mean, I'm glad we waited for as long as we did, but that is where they communicate
that's
all the time.
I know, and that's the hard thing, and you nailed it, right? Because that's what I'm hearing too. It's like, well, this is on Snapchat. That's how they talk.
It is how they
That's
talk.
how they communicate. And I think one of the things that, you know, Dwayne Matthews always brings up, one of the education specialists, he brings up the fact that technology and all of that is here. AI is here. And I'm sort of, you know, I'm sidestepping a little bit because he said, that is here, and we're going to be using it. So let's teach them, the kids, how to use it in a way that is responsible. Because if I try to avoid social media with my kids, they're not going to know how to use it, right? And so you kind of want to be there for those moments where they are using it.
The line I use a lot, and I preface everything I'm saying that my kids are 10, 7, and 3. So we're not quite there yet, but we talk a lot about how it's a tool, not a toy. And the only kind of experience I can give them is my experience online, which has been largely positive, but has also been devastatingly negative in some cases. There are things that I've posted that I've deleted that are still there. I'll never forget when my oldest came home and he's like, Mom, I Googled Eddie, our dog, EDDY, and what popped up was a picture of him that I had posted, and he saw himself on the internet, and that felt weird for him. And I thought, remember that? Don't forget that feeling, because that is going to exist for the rest of your online life, is that you don't have a lot of control over what lives.
Yeah.
So I do feel scared too. I don't know how to navigate this. And I also know, Anne-Marie, to your point that you've said to us kind of off air, is that things change so much. And so the decisions I make today might not at all be relevant in 5 years.
And that happened to us during COVID. We had a digital plan. We had timing out.
Yes.
The charger was in our bedroom. No phones, no devices in their bedrooms. We did all the right things based on all the stories and interviews we'd done. And then COVID happened and everything went online. All of a sudden the computer had to be in their bedroom because they were doing homework there. And things kind of never left. I do envy you guys in the fact that the schools are now on board and there's no phones allowed in the classroom. Our kids came through where there were phones and everything. And so they're kind of playing catch up a little bit in restrictions.
Thanks so much for being with us today.
For more great conversations, you can download or hit subscribe to Your Morning, the podcast on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget, you can always watch us live weekday mornings on CTV, CTV News Channel, or on your CTV News app. Start your morning with us.